She's my best friend's sister, but that night, she looked at me like I was meant to leave. Eli had always loved the stars. Ever since he was a child, the tiny lights in the night sky had called to him, whispering promises of adventure and discovery. Living on Mars's orbital colony had only strengthened that fascination. The colony itself was a marvel, a network of domes connected by transparent tunnels, where humans and machines worked side by side to make life on the red planet possible. Yet despite the wonders of his surroundings, Eli often felt a little disconnected from the people around him. His world was mostly numbers, machines, and routines. That is, until tonight. The evening had started like any other festival on the colony, a celebration of Mars's first terraforming efforts, with music, lights, and laughter bouncing between the domes. Eli was visiting his best friend, Jonas, who had insisted he come along. Jonas's family was warm, welcoming, and always full of stories about the early days of the colony. But tonight, Eli was distracted by someone else entirely. Lyra, Jonas's younger sister, moved through the crowd like she belonged to another world. She had a quiet energy that drew attention without demanding it. Her hair caught the glow of the festival lights, and her eyes, sharp and curious, seemed to notice everything, not just the decorations or the performers, but the people, the way they moved, the way they spoke. Eli had met her many times before, of course. He and Jonas had grown up together, and Lyra had always been part of that world, but tonight felt different. As Eli reached the main dome, he saw Lyra standing near a display of the colony's AI project, the very AI system that helped maintain the life support for the entire dome network. She was examining it carefully, her fingers tracing patterns on the holographic interface, eyes reflecting the soft glow of data streams. Eli hesitated for a moment, unsure if he should approach. But then she looked up, and their eyes met. It was that look that stopped him in his tracks. There was a depth to it, something that made him feel like she saw more than just his face. It was almost as if she were silently telling him to stay, to be part of something important, something he didn't yet understand. "Eli," she said, her voice soft but deliberate, "I didn't expect to see you here tonight." "Jonas insisted," Eli replied with a small smile. "He said I should see the festival. I didn't know it would be this." His words faltered as he gestured vaguely at the lights, the people, the stars outside the dome. Lyra smiled, a faint but knowing smile. "It's more than just a festival, isn't it?" she asked. "There's something about tonight, don't you feel it?" Eli nodded slowly. He did feel it. There was an energy in the air, subtle but undeniable, like the colony itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. "You want to see something?" Lyra asked suddenly, her eyes glinting with curiosity. "Something that only a few people know about." Eli tilted his head, intrigued. "What is it?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned and walked toward one of the less crowded corridors of the dome. Eli followed, curiosity outweighing caution. They passed displays showing Mars's terraforming progress, children running with tiny robotic pets, and the occasional scientist explaining data to a small group of visitors. The laughter and chatter of the festival faded behind them as Lyra led him into a quieter part of the colony, an area reserved for research and experimentation. "This way," she said, pausing at a heavy sliding door. She tapped a code into the panel, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside was a lab filled with equipment Eli had never seen before, holographic interfaces floating in midair, delicate instruments humming with energy, and at the center, a sleek, compact AI unit glowing softly. "This is what I've been working on," Lyra said, her voice tinged with pride. "I call it Orion." Eli stepped closer, his eyes wide. "It's amazing. What does it do?" Lyra's eyes sparkled. "It listens, not just to humans but to the universe itself. Orion can translate signals from space, patterns that might be messages from intelligent life out there. And tonight, I think we're about to hear something important." Eli felt a shiver of excitement. The idea that humans might finally understand messages from another world was incredible. He had read about it, dreamed about it, but never imagined he would see it happening. Not in person, not here, not with Lyra standing beside him. "How?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lyra gestured toward the AI. "Orion can process complex signals, analyze them for patterns, and even suggest interpretations. But it needs a human mind, too, someone who can see beyond the data, someone who can notice the subtleties. That's where you come in." Eli blinked. "Me?" "Yes, you," she said firmly. "You have a perspective I trust. You notice things others might miss." Her gaze lingered on him, that same intensity from earlier. "I need you to stay tonight, please. I can't do this alone." Eli felt a strange mix of nervousness and anticipation. Something about her request felt like more than just a collaboration on a scientific project. It felt like a choice to step into something bigger than himself. And for reasons he couldn't fully explain, he nodded. "Okay," he said. "I'll stay." Lyra's smile softened, and for a moment the air between them seemed charged with unspoken understanding. They turned back to Orion, and the lab seemed to hum with possibility. The AI activated with a soft chime, and a holographic map of the galaxy appeared above its core. Lines of light traced across star systems, converging on a single point far beyond Mars's sensors. Lyra's hands moved quickly, inputting commands, adjusting frequencies, tuning Orion's sensors. "Here," she said, pointing at a distant star cluster. "This signal is repeating. It's structured. It's alive in a way, not alive like us, but intelligent." Eli leaned closer, fascinated. He watched as the AI translated the signal into shapes, patterns, and eventually into what seemed like a simple, repeating sequence. Lyra explained the possible interpretations, and Eli listened intently, offering observations that even she hadn't considered. Hours passed like minutes. The festival outside continued, the sounds fading in and out, but inside the lab time seemed to stretch differently. Each discovery, each decoded pattern, brought a new thrill. Eli found himself not just participating in science, but in a shared adventure, side by side with someone who understood the weight of the moment. Finally, Lyra paused and leaned back, her expression a mix of exhaustion and triumph. "We've only scratched the surface," she said softly. "But tonight we've done something important. We've listened. We've understood a little more than anyone else ever has." Eli nodded, his mind racing. He felt the truth of her words deep in his chest. It wasn't just about the signal or the AI or even the science. It was about the human mind, the curiosity, the courage, the ability to see patterns and possibilities. That was what made humans remarkable. That was what made him feel alive. And then he saw her look again, the one that had caught him when he first arrived. It was there, soft but insistent, telling him that tonight wasn't over. That his choice to stay, to be part of this moment, mattered more than he could know. Eli realized something then. The universe was vast, full of mysteries waiting to be understood. And for the first time, he felt not like a small part of it, but like someone who could contribute, someone who mattered. Lyra smiled at him as if reading his thoughts. "Thank you for staying," she said simply. And in that moment, Eli knew that he wouldn't have left even if he could. Not tonight. Not when the stars were speaking and humanity's curiosity was answering back. The lab hummed quietly, the distant lights of Mars shimmering through the dome. Outside, the festival continued. But inside, two humans, one young engineer and one brilliant ethicist, had opened a door to something extraordinary. And nothing would ever feel quite the same again. The air in the lab felt electric. Even though Eli had only spent a few hours with Lyra and Orion, he felt as if he had stepped into a place where time itself behaved differently. Every sound of the colony's festival seemed distant, almost dreamlike. Outside, laughter and music carried through the glass domes, but inside, it was quiet, except for the soft hum of machines and the faint chime of Orion systems. Lyra stood at the center of the lab, her fingers moving deftly over the holographic interface. Eli watched her, fascinated. Her focus was intense, but there was a calmness to it, a confidence that made him feel safe even in the midst of something so extraordinary. "We need to understand the signal," she said, her eyes flicking to him briefly. "We can't just look at it. We need to feel it, interpret it, let it guide us." Eli nodded. "Like learning a new language." "Yes," Lyra said, her smile almost invisible but full of meaning. "Exactly. A language that isn't human, but it's logical, beautiful, and alive in its own way." He moved closer to Orion, watching the holographic patterns twist and turn in midair. It was mesmerizing. Shapes and sequences appeared, rotated, and then transformed into something entirely new. Eli felt a thrill in his chest. He had worked with AI before, but nothing like this. Nothing that felt so alive, so connected to the universe. "Do you ever think about what it might mean?" Eli asked, his voice quiet. "If this really is a message from intelligent life, what are they trying to tell us?" Lyra paused, her gaze returning to the patterns. "I think they're showing us possibilities," she said slowly. "Not instructions, not warnings, just perspectives, ways of thinking about the universe that we haven't considered. That's why it's so important to understand it. Not to control it, but to learn from it." Eli felt a warmth spread through him. This was why he had stayed. This was why her look had stopped him earlier. This moment wasn't just about discovery. It was about collaboration, about two human minds working together to reach beyond the ordinary. They leaned over Orion, analyzing one particular pattern that seemed to repeat more frequently than the others. The AI interpreted it into a sequence of glowing lines, almost like a musical score. Eli squinted at it, trying to make sense of what he saw. "It's harmonious," he murmured, "like it's trying to communicate through rhythm, not words." Lyra's eyes lit up. "Yes, that's exactly it. The aliens, or whatever they are, they think in patterns, in sequences. It's a language built on structure, not speech. And Orion is helping us translate it into something our minds can understand." They spent hours experimenting, adjusting Orion's algorithms, running simulations, and translating each new discovery. Eli was amazed at how much insight Lyra had. She wasn't just a scientist. She was a philosopher, an artist, and a thinker all at once. Her questions went beyond the data. She asked why, not just how. She looked for meaning, not just facts. As the night deepened, Eli realized he was starting to see the patterns differently. At first, they seemed random, almost chaotic. But now he began to notice repetitions, symmetries, and connections. A shape here mirrored another there. A rhythm in one sequence echoed in a completely different one. It was beautiful, like the universe itself was speaking through Orion. "You see it too, don't you?" Lyra said softly, her voice almost hesitant. Eli nodded. "I do, it's alive." Lyra smiled. "Exactly, and that's why humans are needed. Orion can process the data, but it can't understand context, intuition, or emotion. That's where we come in. We can interpret the meaning, the intention, the humanity of the message." Eli felt a shiver run down his spine. Humanity. That word had never felt so important. They weren't just decoding signals. They were connecting, in a small but real way, with someone else out in the cosmos. And the responsibility of that realization pressed on him. For a moment, Eli allowed himself to glance at Lyra. She was radiant in the soft light of the lab, her hair catching the glow of the holograms. And then he remembered her look from earlier, the one that had stopped him from leaving. It wasn't just curiosity or excitement in her eyes. It was trust. It was belief in him. And that belief mattered more than he could explain. They worked quietly together for hours. Each breakthrough led to another, each discovery sparking questions and ideas. Eli suggested trying to compare the sequences to natural phenomena on Mars, the patterns of dust storms, the flow of water in the domes, the orbits of satellites. Lyra's eyes lit up at the idea. Of course, she said. Maybe they're using universal principles, the same patterns that appear in nature, the same rhythms that guide planets and life. If we can match those, we might understand more about their logic. They ran the simulations, comparing alien sequences to natural processes. Slowly, patterns began to emerge. A certain sequence echoed the movement of the dust storms over Valles Marineris. Another mirrored the rotational patterns of the orbital satellites. Eli couldn't help but feel a thrill. The aliens, whoever they were using the universe itself as their language. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Lyra looked at him, her expression softening. "It is, and that's what I wanted you to see. Not just the science, not just the math, but the beauty, the elegance. That's what makes this human work worthwhile. We can see it, we can feel it, and that makes us unique." Eli smiled, a warmth spreading in his chest. For so long he had felt small, like a tiny cog in the machinery of Mars's colony. But here now he felt enormous, part of something that mattered, part of something larger than himself. And part of that experience was Lyra. As the hours passed, the patterns became more intricate. Eli began to notice something remarkable. The signal seemed almost aware of them. It responded to their interpretations, adjusting slightly, almost as if Orion's translation and their observations were guiding it. "Do you see that?" Eli said, pointing at the holographic sequence. Lyra leaned in, eyes wide. "It's adapting. It's like it knows we're learning and it's helping us understand. This isn't just a message, it's a conversation." The idea struck Eli like lightning, a conversation. They were not merely observers of the universe. They were participants. And in that moment, he understood why Lyra had looked at him the way she had earlier. She had known this night could change everything if he chose to stay, if he chose to engage. For Eli, there was no doubt. He was meant to stay. He was meant to be part of this discovery, this dialogue with the cosmos. And he was grateful for her trust, her invitation, and her quiet insistence. Lyra, noticing his understanding, let out a soft laugh. It wasn't loud or boisterous, but it carried a joy that made Eli feel like the entire lab was alive. "You've done more than I expected," she said. "Not just helping with the AI, but seeing the patterns, noticing the rhythm. You're extraordinary, Eli." Eli felt a blush rise in his cheeks. I didn't do it alone." She smiled, a faint but genuine expression that lit up her face. "No, and that's the point. Humanity works in harmony, collaboration, trust, empathy. That's why we're needed. That's why we can achieve things Orion could never do alone." For a long while, they continued their work, side by side, eyes reflecting the holographic glow, hearts beating in quiet excitement. Each breakthrough was a small victory, each discovery a reason to celebrate. And as dawn approached, Eli realized something profound. He wasn't just learning about the universe, he was learning about himself, about courage, about curiosity, about the power of connection, and about the quiet, remarkable bond forming between him and Lyra, one that was built not on grand gestures, but on trust, respect, and shared wonder. Finally, as the first hints of Mars's sun rose over the horizon, Eli leaned back and stretched. Lyra did the same, a tired but satisfied smile on her face. "Tonight," she said softly, "we've only begun. There's so much more to understand, so much more to discover. But this is a start, and you've made it unforgettable." Eli looked at her, feeling the weight of her words. "I'll never forget tonight," he said honestly. Lyra's eyes met his again, that same look, the one that had stopped him from leaving. It was softer now, warmer, full of promise. And Eli knew that whatever lay ahead, he wouldn't face it alone. Because sometimes, a single night, a single choice could change everything. And tonight, their story was just beginning. The next morning, the first rays of the Martian sun crept across the red dunes outside the colony, casting a soft, warm light into the lab. Eli arrived early, still buzzing with the energy of the previous night. The memory of Orion's holographic patterns, Lyra's intense eyes, and the strange, almost alive signal lingered in his mind like a dream he didn't want to wake from. Lyra was already at the lab when he entered. She was standing in front of Orion, adjusting its sensors with practiced precision. Her hair caught the sunlight streaming in through the dome, giving her an almost ethereal glow. She turned and smiled when she saw him. "Morning," she said, her voice calm yet charged with purpose. "I was hoping you'd be here." "I wouldn't miss it," Eli replied, moving closer to the holographic interface. "Last night, I can't stop thinking about the patterns. It's like they were trying to speak to us, in a way no human has ever heard before." Lyra nodded. "Exactly, and I think we're ready to take the next step. Orion has decoded enough of the basic sequences. Now we need to look at the more complex ones, the ones that might carry meaning beyond rhythm or shape, the ones that could tell us why they're reaching out." Eli's excitement surged. He had felt the thrill of discovery before, but this was different. This wasn't just learning about science or technology. This was participating in a conversation with the universe itself, and he was standing right at the edge of something extraordinary. They worked side by side, their hands hovering over the holographic projections, fingers brushing occasionally in the excitement of collaboration. Each new pattern brought a fresh challenge. The signals were no longer simple sequences. They were layered, multidimensional, and almost poetic in their complexity. Eli noticed repetitions within repetitions, patterns within patterns, as if the message itself had depth that unfolded slowly, only for those willing to look carefully. "It's like a puzzle," Eli said, leaning over the display, "but it's alive. It changes slightly every time we decode it, almost like it's testing us." Lyra's eyes sparkled. "Yes, that's exactly it. They want us to understand, but not by just reading data. They want us to think, interpret, and reason. They're teaching us their language through experience." Eli nodded. "So, Orion helps translate, but we provide the intuition." "Precisely," Lyra said. "And that's why humans are essential. Machines can process data, but they can't imagine, anticipate, or empathize. Those are qualities unique to us, and tonight we'll need all of them." Hours passed as they decoded the sequences. The patterns became increasingly sophisticated, weaving shapes that resembled the orbital paths of planets, the spirals of galaxies, and even the growth rings of plants. Eli realized something remarkable. The signal wasn't just a message. It was a lesson, a demonstration of the universe's order and beauty, and perhaps even a way to help humans understand their own place within it. "Look at this one," Lyra said suddenly, pointing at a swirling, intricate pattern that resembled a double helix. "It's repeating, but in a way that mirrors life on Earth. DNA, the structure of life itself. I think they're showing us that life is universal, not unique to our planet." Eli's heart raced. The implications were staggering. "So they're teaching us science, philosophy, and maybe even ethics all at once," Lyra nodded. "Yes, and it's up to us to understand it responsibly. This knowledge, it's powerful, but it's not just for discovery, it's for guidance, for understanding, for growth." The weight of her words settled over him. For a moment, Eli felt the enormity of their task. They were not just decoding signals. They were interpreting knowledge from beings far beyond human comprehension. Every decision they made, every observation they recorded could shape how humanity responded, and perhaps even how humanity would evolve. Eli shook off the feeling of pressure, replacing it with determination. "We can do this," he said firmly. "We have Orion, we have each other, and we have human creativity. That's enough." Lyra smiled at him, her expression a mixture of pride and relief. "Exactly. That's why I asked you to stay. Your perspective is invaluable. Together we can make sense of this." The lab hummed with quiet energy as they continued working. Eli noticed a new layer emerging in the patterns, one that seemed less mathematical and more symbolic. Shapes appeared that resembled abstract forms like the ideograms of ancient human languages, yet perfectly structured, as if each symbol carried meaning beyond its form. What if this is a story? Eli wondered aloud. Like a history or a philosophy expressed in symbols and sequences rather than words. Lyra's eyes widened. It could be a story from another civilization, teaching us lessons through patterns rather than speech. That would explain why Orion alone can't fully understand it. It needs human context, human reasoning, and imagination. They spent the next few hours attempting to interpret the symbolic layer. Each guess led to new insights, and each insight opened more questions. The patterns weren't static. They shifted in response to their interpretations, almost as if the signal was testing their comprehension, rewarding correct insights with subtle adjustments that guided them further. At one point, Eli noticed something extraordinary. A sequence of symbols repeated in a circular pattern, mirroring the orbits of Mars and its moons. It was as if the signal had drawn inspiration from their very environment. He pointed it out to Lyra. She leaned over, studying the pattern carefully. "You're right," she said softly. "They're using the cosmos itself as context. The universe is their language and they expect us to read it. Our planet, our solar system, they're teaching us to interpret meaning through observation, not just data." Eli's mind whirled. The aliens, or whatever they were demonstrating that understanding required more than machines or algorithms. It required humans, fully present, aware, and attentive. And for the first time, Eli felt a deep connection to something larger than himself, the universe, life itself, and the potential of human understanding. Hours melted into a seamless flow of discovery. As Mars's twin moons rose in the sky, Eli and Lyra sat together in quiet concentration, occasionally exchanging insights, sometimes just watching the patterns shift in the holograms. Their collaboration had become effortless, intuitive. Finally, a breakthrough came. Eli noticed a subtle rhythm in the symbols that aligned with the rotational period of Mars. It was almost imperceptible, but once he pointed it out, Lyra saw it too. "This is incredible," she whispered. "They're teaching us to correlate abstract information with the physical universe. Patterns of thought mapped to reality. It's beautiful." Eli smiled, feeling a thrill in his chest. "It's more than that. It's a way to understand our own world better, maybe even to improve it." Lyra nodded. "Yes, and that's why human judgment matters. Orion can provide translations, but it's our decisions, our reasoning, our ethical awareness that will make this knowledge meaningful." For a long time they sat in silence, absorbed in the patterns and the possibilities they revealed. The lab felt alive, as if the universe itself was speaking to them, guiding their minds and encouraging their understanding. And through it all, Eli felt the quiet presence of Lyra, her calm, thoughtful gaze, the subtle warmth of her encouragement, and the unspoken trust she had placed in him. Eventually, Lyra leaned back and rubbed her eyes. "We've done more than I ever expected tonight," she said softly. "We've made real progress, but there's still so much more to understand. I think we're ready for the next stage." Eli nodded. "Whatever that is, we'll do it together. Orion, you, me, all of us. We'll figure it out." Lyra's gaze softened, and she smiled. For a moment, Eli felt the same intensity he had felt the night before, that look that told him he was meant to stay, meant to be part of something extraordinary. And now, after hours of shared discovery, he understood why. This was more than science. This was a connection to knowledge, to life, to the universe, and to each other. As the Martian night deepened and the colony settled into quiet, Eli realized something profound. Humanity's potential was not in technology alone. It was in curiosity, empathy, and the courage to explore the unknown. It was in collaboration, in shared discovery and trust. And it was in moments like this, where two people, united by curiosity and respect, could unlock secrets that had remained hidden for eons. Lyra stood and stretched, glancing at the holographic projections one last time. "Tomorrow," she said, "we go further. We'll try to interpret their intentions, not just their language. That's when it will get truly fascinating." Eli smiled. "I can't wait." And as they left the lab together, stepping into the soft glow of Mars's twin moons, Eli felt something he hadn't felt before, a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging, and the quiet, undeniable certainty that humanity, with all its curiosity, creativity, and heart, was capable of remarkable things. Tonight they had not just decoded signals. They had glimpsed the future of understanding, and they had done it together. And Eli knew with every fiber of his being that this was only the beginning. The Martian sky was a deep, dark blue as Eli entered the lab. The twin moons hung low over the horizon, their pale light reflecting through the transparent dome. The colony was quiet, save for the distant hum of life support systems and the occasional whistle of wind brushing across the red dunes. But inside the lab, a different kind of energy pulsed, one of anticipation, curiosity, and responsibility. Lyra was already at the central console, her eyes scanning the holographic projections floating above Orion. The AI's patterns were more complex than ever, layering sequences upon sequences, weaving shapes that seemed to echo not only the structure of the universe but the principles of life itself. Eli felt a thrill of excitement, tinged with a quiet sense of gravity. "Good morning," Lyra said without looking up. "Last night was incredible, but today is the real challenge." Eli approached, peering at the projections. "The patterns, they're different, more structured, almost like instructions." Lyra nodded slowly. "Exactly. Orion has interpreted the next layer of the signal. It's proposing methods, theoretical solutions for planetary stabilization, techniques for regulating climate, optimizing resources, even improving ecosystem balance. But there's a catch." Eli frowned. "A catch?" "Yes," she said, turning to face him. "These methods are powerful and they work, but they require careful judgment. Implementing them blindly could have unintended consequences. We must decide what is ethically sound, what aligns with human values. It's no longer about understanding the language, it's about making choices." Eli felt the weight of her words settle over him. They were no longer just learners, observers, or explorers. They were participants with responsibility. The knowledge they had decoded carried consequences, and humanity's role in interpreting and applying it was critical. "So, we have to choose," Eli said quietly. "Not just what works, but what's right." Lyra nodded. "Exactly, and that's why I needed you here. You bring perspective, intuition, and ethical awareness. Orion can provide the data, but only humans can judge the broader implications." Eli swallowed, feeling both excitement and apprehension. The room felt heavier now, charged with the weight of possibility. They spent the next few hours analyzing the proposed methods. Each solution was brilliant, elegant in its logic, harmonious with natural systems, and revolutionary in its potential. But each also carried risks. Some sequences suggested interventions that could accelerate planetary stabilization, but might disrupt fragile ecological balances. Others offered slower, safer approaches, but would take longer to show results. "Here," Eli said, pointing at a swirling holographic projection that mirrored the dust storm cycles over Val's Marineris. "This approach balances energy flow and ecosystem health. It seems safer, but it might take decades to show results." Lyra leaned closer, her eyes scanning the projection. "Yes, it's cautious but responsible. I like it. It respects the complexity of life, and that's critical. Implementing the others too quickly could destabilize everything we've built." They continued deliberating, discussing each option in detail. Eli suggested small experiments, simulations, and predictive models to understand potential outcomes. Lyra contributed insights on ethics, philosophy, and long-term sustainability. Together, they debated, questioned, and refined each solution, weighing the needs of humans, the environment, and the broader planetary system. Hours passed like minutes. The patterns shifted as Orion processed their decisions, subtly adjusting to their interpretations. Eli realized something remarkable. The signal was interactive. It wasn't just conveying knowledge. It was responding to human judgment, testing their ethical reasoning, and guiding them toward choices that combined intelligence with morality. "This is incredible," Eli whispered. "They're not just teaching us science. They're teaching us responsibility, empathy, and foresight." Lyra nodded. "Yes, and that's what humans bring to the universe. Knowledge alone isn't enough. It's our ability to understand consequences, anticipate outcomes, and consider ethical principles that matters. That's what makes us uniquely capable." Eli felt a deep sense of pride. This was more than discovery. This was humanity at its finest, curious, creative, and morally aware. And for the first time, he truly understood why Lyra had looked at him the way she did that first night. She had seen his potential, his ability to contribute not just with skill but with insight, judgment, and conscience. As they continued, Eli noticed a subtle rhythm emerging in the projections. Certain sequences repeated in patterns that mirrored both Martian cycles and human activity, a reminder that understanding required harmony between the universe and human behavior. Lyra observed his realization. "Exactly," she said softly. "They're teaching us that knowledge is only valuable when applied wisely. The universe can give us solutions, but we choose how to act. That's the test. That's what makes us human." Eli nodded, absorbing the lesson. He realized that this night, this work, was about more than signals or patterns. It was about demonstrating humanity's ability to act responsibly, creatively, and ethically, to rise to a challenge that required both intellect and heart. For a long time, they worked quietly together, speaking in low voices, sharing observations and refining interpretations. Occasionally, Eli would glance at Lyra, catching her thoughtful expression, the intensity in her eyes, and the quiet trust she placed in him. And each time he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Finally, after hours of deliberation, they arrived at a solution. It was a combination of methods that balanced efficiency with caution, innovation with sustainability, and intelligence with ethics. Orion processed the final projections, and the AI's holographic displays shifted, glowing more brightly, almost as if acknowledging their success. Lyra leaned back, a tired but satisfied smile on her face. "We did it," she said softly. "We've made the choices that honor life, the planet, and human responsibility, and we did it together." Eli felt a rush of accomplishment. "It's incredible," he said. "The universe, it gave us the knowledge, but we gave it meaning. We applied wisdom to discovery." Lyra's gaze softened. "Yes, that's what I hoped you'd see. Human creativity, empathy, and judgment are just as important as intelligence or technology. That's why we're needed in the universe." For a moment, they sat in silence, letting the significance of the moment sink in. Outside, the Martian sky was fading into the soft glow of dawn. The colony was stirring, but inside the lab, time seemed suspended, a quiet space where discovery, responsibility, and human ingenuity intersected. Eli glanced at Lyra again. She caught his look and smiled faintly. There was a warmth in her eyes, a quiet understanding that this night had forged more than scientific achievement. It had strengthened trust, partnership, and perhaps even something deeper. Lyra turned back to Orion. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "we'll take the next step. We'll try to understand the purpose behind these signals, the intention. That's when the real test begins. Not just interpreting knowledge or applying it ethically, but understanding the minds that sent it." Eli nodded, feeling a thrill of anticipation. "I'm ready." Lyra's gaze met his again, that familiar intensity from their first night together. It was softer now, warmer, full of encouragement. And Eli knew without a doubt that whatever lay ahead, they would face it side by side. As the first light of Mars illuminated the lab, Eli felt a profound sense of connection to the universe, to knowledge, and to the human spirit. Tonight, they had not just made discoveries. They had demonstrated what it meant to be human, curious, responsible, ethical, and capable of understanding complexity with both heart and mind. And Eli knew with certainty that this was only the beginning. Because the universe was vast, the signals were infinite, and humanity's potential, guided by wisdom, empathy, and courage, was limitless. The Martian sky was a deep crimson as Eli and Lyra entered the lab, the soft hum of the colony greeting them. It was the fifth night of their work with Orion, and the weight of anticipation pressed quietly against them. Each night had built upon the last, guiding them deeper into the alien signals, testing their intelligence, intuition, and judgment. Tonight, they would reach the culmination of their efforts, the moment when curiosity, collaboration, and humanity itself would meet the mysteries of the cosmos. Lyra was already standing in front of Orion, her eyes reflecting the swirling holographic patterns. Eli could see her focus, her determination, and the quiet calm that had become so familiar over these nights. "Tonight," she said softly, "we don't just interpret the signals, we understand their intention, why they are reaching out, what they want us to see." Eli took a deep breath. "It feels bigger than anything we've faced before." "Yes," Lyra agreed, "but that's the point. Intelligence without purpose is empty. Knowledge without understanding is meaningless. We are about to see not just a message, but a perspective, a lesson the universe wants humanity to learn." Orion's lights pulsed as the patterns shifted. Symbols, sequences, and shapes merged in layers of extraordinary complexity. Eli felt a sense of awe. He had always loved the stars, but never had he felt such a direct connection to them, as if they were not distant points of light, but intelligent beings offering insight into existence itself. The first signal they analyzed tonight was a reflection of planetary harmony. It suggested principles of balance, how energy, matter, and life could coexist in equilibrium. Eli and Lyra watched the sequences unfold, seeing patterns that mirrored not just Mars, but the flow of life on Earth and beyond. "They're showing us that life is fragile," Lyra said quietly, "but resilient. That intelligence and empathy matter as much as raw power, that our choices ripple through the universe, even if we don't always see it." Eli felt a deep resonance with her words. Humanity had always sought to explore, to create, to learn. But here, he realized that exploration without care, creation without consideration, knowledge without understanding, it all had limits. The aliens' signals weren't instructions for conquest or power. They were an invitation to reflect, to grow, and to act with responsibility. Hours passed as they decoded further layers. Each symbol revealed more about the alien civilization, their values, their observations of life, their understanding of ethics. It became clear that the signals weren't just meant to teach human science or mathematics. They were guiding humanity to see itself more clearly, to recognize the strength and responsibility of intelligence. Eli noticed a series of sequences that echoed the patterns of human collaboration, teamwork, trust, and communication. "They understand us," he whispered. "They know our potential, and they're showing us what we can do when we work together." Lyra smiled faintly, her eyes shining. "Exactly. This is why humans are needed in the universe. Machines can process information, but only humans can combine logic with empathy, analysis with ethics, curiosity with responsibility. That's what makes us extraordinary." As the Martian night deepened, Eli and Lyra reached the final sequence. It was unlike anything they had seen before, a radiant, spiraling set of patterns that seemed to extend infinitely, reflecting cosmic cycles, planetary rotations, and life itself. It was not just data, it was beauty, purpose, and meaning intertwined. It's a vision, Eli said softly, almost reverently. A vision of what humans could become if we act wisely. Lyra nodded. Yes, they're not telling us what to do, they're showing us what's possible. Harmony, balance, understanding, the potential of humanity when we combine knowledge, ethics, and curiosity. For a long moment they were silent, letting the enormity of the revelation sink in. Outside, Mars's moons glimmered, and the colony lights twinkled like stars come to rest on the planet. Inside the lab, however, it felt as if the universe itself was speaking directly to them, teaching, guiding, and inspiring. Eli realized then why he had stayed all those nights, why Lyra's look had been so compelling on the first night. It wasn't just about curiosity or trust or even attraction. It was about connection to knowledge, to purpose, to each other, and to the broader universe. This moment was humanity at its best, attentive, thoughtful, creative, and courageous. Lyra turned to him, her expression gentle but full of meaning. "You see now, don't you?" she asked. "Why it matters that we stayed, that we worked together, that we brought our humanity into this process." Eli nodded, words failing him. He felt pride, wonder, and a quiet joy all at once. "I see it," he said finally. "We're not just learning, we're becoming something greater. Together we're showing what humans can do." Lyra smiled, a soft warmth in her eyes. "And that's the message they've been sending. Knowledge is infinite, the universe is vast, but intelligence guided by responsibility, empathy, and creativity, that's what matters. That's what makes humans remarkable." They returned to the final holographic projection, studying it as Orion's lights shimmered around them. Eli and Lyra traced the spirals, noting patterns of cooperation, balance, and understanding. Every sequence seemed to echo a principle humans already valued: teamwork, sustainability, learning, ethics, and empathy. The aliens, whoever they were, had created a map not just of knowledge, but of humanity's potential. Eli reached out to the projection, running his fingers through the glowing symbols. He felt a sense of reverence, of connection. "It's like they're not just teaching us science," he said. "They're teaching us how to be better humans." Lyra nodded, her hand brushing his briefly. "Yes, that's why it mattered that you stayed. That's why your insight, your creativity, and your care were needed. Humans aren't perfect, but our choices define us. And tonight, we've made choices that matter." Hours passed, and slowly, the first light of Mars's sunrise crept over the horizon, bathing the lab in soft gold and crimson. The patterns in Orion's holograms shimmered one last time before stabilizing into a final arrangement, a radiant spiral that represented balance, potential, and harmony. Eli felt a deep sense of fulfillment. They had reached the culmination of their journey, not through violence, not through force, but through curiosity, intelligence, collaboration, and ethical understanding. Humanity had been tested not physically but morally, intellectually, and spiritually, and they had risen to the challenge. Lyra turned to him, her gaze calm, warm, and inviting. "This is our reward," she said softly. "Knowledge, understanding, and the realization that humanity is capable of greatness. If we act wisely, responsibly, and together, there's nothing we cannot achieve." Eli smiled, feeling a sense of peace and exhilaration he had never known. "And it all started because I stayed," he said, his voice quiet but full of certainty. Lyra's eyes softened and she reached out, her hand brushing his again in a gesture of trust and connection. "Yes," she said. "Because sometimes one choice, one decision to be present, to engage, to care, can change everything." They stood together in the lab, watching the spiral of light shimmer in Orion's hologram, a symbol not just of alien knowledge, but of human potential. Outside, Mars awakened beneath the twin moons and the rising sun. The colony stirred with life, unaware of the extraordinary journey unfolding within the lab. Eli felt a quiet determination settle in him. Humanity had been shown what was possible: balance, creativity, ethics, and empathy. And it was their responsibility to carry that vision forward, not through power or conquest, but through understanding, collaboration, and human ingenuity. Lyra glanced at him once more, a subtle smile playing on her lips. "The universe is vast," she said, "but humans are remarkable, and together we can rise to meet its challenges." Eli nodded, a deep sense of purpose filling him. "Yes, together." As the Martian sun rose fully over the horizon, the lab glowed with golden light. Orion's holograms shimmered, now still, yet alive with meaning. Eli and Lyra stepped back, letting the moment settle. For hours, days, or perhaps lifetimes, they would remember this night, the night when humanity glimpsed its own potential, guided by curiosity, intelligence, and heart. And as they walked toward the dome's exit, the first light touching their faces, Eli realized something profound. The universe was full of mysteries, but humans with empathy, creativity, and courage were capable of rising to meet them. Tonight, they had not just decoded alien signals. They had discovered something far more extraordinary: the limitless potential of humanity itself. And Eli knew with certainty that the journey had only just begun.